On today's show, we're only talking about the hardest, most true-to-life science fiction. No, you know what? Screw it! We're talking about Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts review today on Sci-Fi Weekly.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Sci-Fi Weekly.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sci-Fi Weekly on Popcorn Talk. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. Very excited for today's show. I think my panel is also excited for today's show.
Very excited.
If you guys aren't already, make sure you subscribe to Popcorn Talk on YouTube at Popcorn Talk Network, on Twitter at The Popcorn Talk. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Sci-Fi Weekly. Now let me introduce my panel. We got Jesse Klein back as always.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Super excited to talk to you about this science fiction movie we all watched. As you guys know, I'm a big science fiction fan, and this ticked all my science fiction boxes. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JessKlein1. That's JessKlein, the number 1.
And joining us on this magical ride into the wizarding world, Emma Fife.
Hello, that's me, Emma Fife. I can be found all over the internet at my name, Emma Fife, EMMAFYFFE. Yes, I agree, Jess. This is a very serious science fiction film. I would, like dances that line between like sci-fi fantasy, but I'd say it comes in at a hard science fiction.
Yep. We watched Arrival last week. This is just, it's a small story, only like 1 or 2 main characters.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Look, we're aware that technically Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is not science fiction.
Technically.
But it seemed like it was still worth talking
it's
about.
our wheelhouse.
Especially, it's close by. And look, I am just a massive Harry Potter fan.
Yeah, and I think too that, especially when you're talking in the sci-fi realm nowadays, certainly I think you get a lot of crossover between sci-fi and fantasy fans. So the most people I'd say who like science fiction also like Harry Potter.
Yeah, and look, it's like Arthur C. Clarke said.
Right.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So really all we're saying is that wizards in the Harry Potter world are just really, really advanced scientists.
Yeah.
I mean, that have genetically, I don't know what the rules for magic are. Sometimes it's genetically passed, sometimes it's not.
Actually, we got a little bit of we actually did get into there's a little bit of science, and we're going to talk about that when we get into the review of it later in the show. But there's also a bunch of news today, because we're going to talk a little bit about the King Kong Skull Island trailer that came out.
Yep.
There's some big Inhumans news.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of other news, and we got to get through it real quick, because we only have a limited amount of time. So we got to move through it at ludicrous speed.
Ludicrous speed! Go!
Producer Dean Devlin announced this week that the Stargate reboot movie is actually not going to be going forward. So bad news there. If only this guy had some circular, almost watery device that would allow him to transport into a different reality where an Egyptian god is actually interested in seeing a third installment of this movie.
I think Ra would be interesting.
Yeah, Ra would definitely be interesting.
He'd be the one.
News in the Star Wars world, the Han Solo feature has found it. None other than the mother of dragons herself, Emilia Clarke, is cast in it. And by dragons, of course, I mean crate dragons. From Tatooine.
Right, naturally.
You know, the ones that Jacob Solo fights? Guys, I read a lot of extended universe books.
Big rumors are swelling around Doctor Who as we get ready for the upcoming Christmas special. Insiders at the BBC have let slip that management is looking for a clean slate going into season 11 and are actively searching for a younger Doctor in the vein of David Tennant. I say, you know who's good? David Tennant. They should just get that guy.
I really like him as an actor. He's really good.
Really wonderful.
I think he might work out in the Doctor Who universe.
He might. They should give him a try.
Sci-Fi announced plans this week to develop the classic Hanlon novel Stranger in a Strange Land into a TV series. The novel is the tale of a boy who's born on Mars, and then he's raised by Martians, and it comes back to Earth with all this knowledge only of a Martian society. Sci-Fi is yet to comment on how the hell a basic cable network is gonna do this story, and keep all of the extensive orgy sequences that are featured in the novel. No, I swear that is a major plot point in the book.
Like every other chapter is an origin
Yeah.
chapter. in
Yeah.
that book.
Yep.
You know what? That sounds interesting. I think I'll grok on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should all grok.
I grok it.
Yeah. HBO officially renewed Westworld for season 2 and is also announcing that Ed Harris will be returning as the Black Rider. So I guess kind of spoilers there. As a sequel to the Western era, I hear it's going to be called Industrial Revolution World. So solve the mystery of the maze as a rough and tough union leader. Watch as your family slowly dies from black lung, and then you lose your job to the machines that took your arm.
Disney has put out the first images of their new Animal Kingdom section, The World of Avatar. The attempts to bring James Cameron's world to life will feature enormous tree-themed rides and meet and greets with the Na'vi. Just be careful not to let them touch your daughter's braids. I'm watching you, Na'vi cosplayers.
That sounds creepy.
Yeah, it does. It sounds really creepy,
Real
actually.
creepy.
Yep.
FX's adaptation of Why the Last Man has found a showrunner in Michael Green, who is currently working on American Gods. He'll be working alongside his American Gods co-writer Brian K. Vaughan to adapt the series that tells the story of a world where all men have been wiped out and it's just women on the planet. It's
just one.
Well, enjoy the show, Emma. Tell
Thank you.
tales of Jesse and I.
Yes, I will. I will.
when we're gone.
Neil Gaiman has a new series called The Building coming to television. It's going to focus on a skyscraper that shifts between realities. Unfortunately, it's going to be on Fox, which means it'll be starring your favorite new actors. It'll be the best show on TV, and it will be canceled within 3 episodes.
Too true, man.
Only
It's
it
too
weren't
real.
so true.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The truest pains cut the deepest.
Yes.
All right, well, let's slow it down. Get the emergency break. That'll do it for Ludicrous Speed for this week. Let's get into some quick news.
Yeah, sure.
The bigger news this week. First up, let's talk about Kong Skull Island.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the trailer?
I did see the trailer.
I feel like this is a reaction to the Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
If we're not going to watch the trailer on today's
No,
show, just in the
I
interest
was
of
gonna
time,
say,
but you guys can check it out. Pause it, come back. We'll talk
didn't
about it.
look. It doesn't look terrible. It just looks kind of like what you expect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's not anything too surprising about it.
It looks like it's character driven and fun. Like that's what this movie, and it actually kind of has to deal with the movie we saw for today's show. But it was like, yeah, when I watched the first King Kong movie, I was like, this could have all taken place on Skull Island.
Yeah.
And I would have been fine. I want to see all these monsters. I want to see what's going on in this weird world where, like, for some reason, tarantulas evolved to be giant.
Yeah.
But people didn't.
But people did not. I think it looks really interesting. I'll see it.
Yeah.
I'll see. It looks like they took. Why I say I think it was a reaction to Godzilla is it looked like, because I feel like in the trailer there's more giant monsters than there were in all of the Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think I don't know if there's going to be enough of a strong story around those.
Yeah.
Like the level of humor I
Yeah.
think is nice. Like
Sure.
you have to, like, if you're going into something that's ridiculous, you sort of have to own that ridiculousness.
It needs to be a little tongue in cheek, and I agree that like it does look like it is aware of the fact that it is ridiculous and it's not going to take itself too seriously, which I don't think that, you know, the Peter Jackson King Kong did take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
I just would like there to be more with the people, because like in the Peter Jackson King Kong there was a solid half hour that was literally just like King Kong fighting T-Rexes on Skull Island.
My
And I
favorite part of them.
and see, for me, I was like, I would rather play this as a video game.
Like in a kaiju film, I don't care about the story. I don't
Okay.
care about the plot. I just want to see my toys fight each other. That's all I care about. And like that was the big problem I had with the Godzilla movie, is like it was all people and and not interesting people either. Like they killed off Bryan Cranston within the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Spoilers if you haven't seen it. I'm sorry. And then and like Dr. Tozawa was barely in it as well. And it's like, these are the most interesting characters. Instead, it's just them trying to prove Army Guy is a good guy. Is that entire movie.
Yeah.
So I'm okay if they're mashing toys together. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It looks like this is the movie that they're like, well, look, we have to get this out and get people at least into the seats so that we can make the Godzilla versus King Kong movie in 2020.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is really all anybody wants to see anyway.
Yeah,
so.
I kind of wish they just would have jumped to that.
Yeah.
Like, we know who King Kong is.
Yeah.
All right. We could, I don't think we need to talk about King Kong anymore. But let's talk about the Inhumans.
Yeah.
I know.
This news blew my mind this week.
Right?
I don't think anyone saw this. I mean, I feel like it was totally unexpected on my end, but
I did.
Okay.
Jesse and I, and like a lot of the especially on Shield.
On S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah.
Like Shield fans, like we'd been talking about like how this would work as a series
Right.
because like the movie was in question and basically I've been calling for the superhero version of Game of Thrones, which is what the Inhumans is and what this series sort of promises to be for a while now. So I thought we would have some fun and look at like what the series is going to look like and who we might cast in it. The big news in it, and to know about this, is that they're going to release it in IMAX. And IMAX,
yes, I saw that.
And IMAX beyond that is co-financing, which puts the budget much higher than you would expect an ABC 8-episode series to be. And that's what it's going to be. It's going to be 8 episodes. The first 2 will premiere in IMAX and then air on television later. But it means that they're going in with a big budget, at least for those first 2.
I was going to say, and isn't there something, too, about, like, if you see it in IMAX versus watching it on TV, like, even if you saw it in IMAX, there's still going to be incentive to watch those first 2 episodes, because my understanding is there's going to be some slightly different content. That's what I had heard.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd heard different rumors as opposed to like how it was going to be broken down.
Yeah.
Official announcements, they've said the first 2 episodes are going to be in IMAX.
And that they'll also be on TV.
All of them will air on television on ABC.
Right.
Yeah.
Starting in September of 2017.
When is 2017 getting here? Soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Soon enough.
Very
Close.
scarily soon.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, it was like, oh, 2017, that looks awesome. But I don't really want it to be 2017.
Yeah,
all
that's
the real shit. Anyway, but let's do some cast.
Good thing there's fantasy worlds we can all live in.
Exactly.
And escape to. Let's talk about casting. Black Bolt.
Yeah.
Jesse and I said to dinner, Emma, I just want to get your thoughts on these as we go through them.
I like that we both chose Lost alumni.
Say, you both chose actors from Lost.
So I said
Matthew Fox.
Thank you. I almost said Matthew Perry, and I'm like, that's wrong.
That would be amazing.
Matthew Fox, Jack on Lost.
Sure.
That was my pick for Black Bolt, because this is a character who's going to have almost no lines. Unless we do flashbacks.
And Jack was famous for having 0 lines on Lost.
He's an actor who I think can convey a lot with his look. Like, he does, on that show, which is the majority of where I've seen him, like, he does a lot with his expressions.
Sure.
And I think that's what you're going to need from Black Bolt.
Part of the reason why I chose Daniel Day Kim is because we saw on that show that a lot of it he wasn't able to speak to people or communicate with people because he didn't speak the same language that they did for multiple seasons.
That's true, but he still like has to talk. I mean, he still was able to talk.
Yeah, but he was much like he did a lot of emoting without saying anything. And I also think Daniel Day Kim is just a fantastic actor.
He is, not to disparage him at all.
And would murder this role.
Yeah.
Like would absolutely destroy this role.
Yeah,
I feel like I just have to like throw in a vote for Josh Holloway because just to keep with the Lost theme.
Just keep the Lost. Terry O'Quinn.
Yes.
So, he just goes, no.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Emil DeRaven as Black Bolt.
Oh God! All right, let's go. Let's talk about Medusa. Because this is one that I was like, Medusa's going to be. I feel like Medusa's probably going to be the biggest character in it because in the comics right now they're really pushing her towards the front more so than Black Bolt,
and she speaks for Black Bolt.
Yes. And like the crazy big hair as her power. Probably the most expensive part of this series.
Yeah, that's where the
her
CGI
hair.
budget's going to be.
It's all going into her hair.
Right.
Yeah.
I said Lucy Liu.
I think Lucy Liu is a solid choice.
I think it is a solid choice.
My main thing is I was thinking about like who has like the regalness to carry as a queen.
For sure.
Was what was my first thought, and it could also follow through some action sequences, and I think Lucy Liu could rule a kingdom.
And I chose Gina Torres because I also was thinking of like regalness, but also someone who could like command a room.
Yep.
And like really like show, like take control. And like Gina Torres throughout her entire career has been that character. And also I think she would just kill it. She'd murder. I'm big fans of all the people I chose.
Yeah.
I just want Gina Torres to be in everything.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm going to have to agree with Jesse on that one. And she just like, you can't take your eyes off her when she's on screen.
Yeah.
And I love Lucy Liu too, but Gina Torres is like, so good.
All right, I feel like I'm losing from Emma right
Also,
now.
both those
I would have
pictures-
voted for Daniel Day Kim, so.
Both those pictures also, they're looking both of them are looking really Medusa-like.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Both that's their taped audition.
Yes.
Yeah, by the way, if you're
Neither
listening
of
to this on audio, after the show, I will upload all of the images from today's show onto our Facebook page at facebook.com/Sci-Fi Weekly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go down to Maximus.
Maximus the Mad.
And this was he's also the only person that we can say is going to definitely be in the series.
Yeah.
Because the image that they put out when they announced the Inhumans showed the only two characters on that image were Black Bolt and Maximus.
Yeah.
Now Medusa is no
A given.
question.
Yeah,
a given.
absolutely.
Everyone else is fair game,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah.
But Maximus was on the image, so we know he's going to be there. Maximus is the brother of Black Bolt.
Yes.
And why I'm like, this is going to be Game of Thrones, because he is always trying to get the throne from Black Bolt, or at least in certain storylines.
And he's also like a good guy. Like he plays it both sides. He's very
Yeah.
Loki-like in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So probably going to be the big bad of the
Yeah.
series, but like in the way that Marvel does, where it's like you see, like especially Marvel Television.
Yes,
does
Marvel
with big
Television in
bads, where
particular.
Yeah.
You see everything about their side.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited. I went with Daniel Radcliffe.
Sure.
I
The
know
cheap
that
option.
it was sort of
Yeah,
like
exactly.
partially it was that your
That's
choice.
like a Dreamcast.
Your choice was so good, and I'm like, damn it, I don't have anyone better than that. So I tried to think
Yeah.
like who might be a surprise in this role, and
Yeah.
I think he could surprise you.
I think it'd be
Oh,
good.
I think he would be fantastic in this role. I just don't really foresee Daniel Radcliffe doing a television series.
Fair. But again,
He's also very young.
that's true.
He's a little
for
young.
Maximus the Mad.
That's true.
Yeah.
The big thing with this that I was thinking about as I'm looking at these actors, because I did try to think about practicality rather.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's going to be an IMAX and the fact they have that budget
Yeah.
of an IMAX co-finance, like it gives it an appeal. And a lot of film actors are already doing television.
That is very
The fact
true.
it's a limited series that's going to be premiering in IMAX and it's Marvel, I think you could pull in some of the you're not going to get like Brad Pitt, but like you
Right.
pull in some of the higher name but maybe like B to A- list
Right.
actors.
Yeah. I just feel like if you're Marvel, you'd probably sit on Daniel Radcliffe for a different character.
Maybe
Like
Probably.
someone in your movies. But I went with
Captain Britain.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing. I went with Jimmy Simpson, most famously from Westworld right now, but also in It's Always Sunny in
Sunny,
Philadelphia, and he had another series about, I think it was like the Breakout Kings or something like that. When I was thinking about Maximus, I was thinking about casting someone who is charismatic and you want to root for, but at the same time has something dark about them,
Yeah.
and could easily turn at any moment. And I think Jimmy Simpson is. I've seen him in he was in Psych. He was great in Psych.
Yeah.
Like he's just a fantastic actor, and I'm glad he's getting his breakout right now.
Yeah.
And I think if you watch Westworld and you subscribe to the multiple timelines theory, then you're totally into this, because I'm definitely into it.
Possible.
I can't argue with him. That's a good choice. Let's talk Karnak, who I think has a solo series right now
Yep.
in the comics. I think his power is very CGI light, but
yeah.
very effective. So I think it makes him a standout possibility for the show.
For sure.
Jesse, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, I went with Travis Fimmel from Vikings, also the Warcraft movie. I think the thing when I was thinking about Karnak is he doesn't speak a lot, and when he does speak, it carries a lot of weight, and it's a lot of emphasis. He's like the advisor to the king, And his power is to always see weakness in everything. He can't not see weakness in not just like buildings or people, but in arguments, in logic, in everything.
Yeah.
So to have someone like Travis Fimmel, who, if you watch Vikings, is very sure of what he says always, and is very, but does not speak that much. And I think he'd kill it as Karnak. And also, I believe him as a martial arts expert, and a fighting expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went with Adrian Brody.
Sure.
Who was a little bit this one was tough only because I only know Karnak to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And but I think like the intelligence behind that Adrian Brody has portrayed in like some of his more dramatic roles, and he has the action hero. That's why I pulled a still from Predators.
Yeah.
He has the action hero guy to him that I think he could be an interesting choice as well.
Adrian Brody's a good choice.
And he looks weird enough to be an Inhuman.
Yeah.
With less makeup.
I mean, that picture of Travis Fimmel, he looks inhuman already.
The next one is the one I expect to get like a laugh out of you guys. Gorgon.
I think that's a perfect choice.
Yeah. I pulled Terry Crews.
Yeah, Terry Crews is a great choice.
He's definitely one. I mean, I pulled Dean Norris, who, like, when you're thinking about Gorgon, it's someone who, like, inspires people, but is also kind of a little goofy. And in Breaking Bad, he was, like, action man, but also, like, had a crystal collection.
Yeah. He's just too small, I think. Like, to make him, like, you need, like, a guy who, like, even... Because remember, it is still TV, so it's not going to be 100% CGI on this guy. So I think you need somebody who just naturally would tower over everyone else. And Terry Crews was
He's
just
very
like...
tall.
He's very tall.
He's very tall in real life.
I've been dying to see him in some Marvel role because I think he's perfect for it. I know he's on Brooklyn Nine-Nine right now, but it's a comedy, lighter shooting schedule. I think you could get him away for like 10 weeks to go shoot Inhumans.
Yeah, that would be
No, I agree with that.
I want to see Terry Crews with cloven hooves for feet.
Shaking the earth every time he steps.
I would totally watch it. All right.
Awesome.
I think some people were asking in the chat. Grinub asked, like, will Skye be in this or Daisy be on this show? We don't know.
Yeah.
Distinct possibility. We don't even know if S.H.I.E.L.D. is coming back, and I think that's going to have a big effect on whether or not you're going to see her carry over.
I think Crystal probably will be in the show. She's a main character in the
there's a lot of possibilities. I would expect some of the newer characers from the new humans as they call them. I think Dante or Inferno. I didn't make that up. That's really what they're doing with this character. I think he's a good bet. Outside shot at Kamala Khan, or I think you might see the origins of her towards the end of this.
That'd be nice.
That's the biggest thing that I think is coming out of this fact that we're getting Inhumans now, not putting it off, and I think ultimately that may have been part of the influence here. I think that right now we need a Miss Marvel television show about a young Pakistani girl living in New Jersey, more than anything else on television
in high school,
and
dealing with like being in high school
and being bullied, all this stuff. It's not right creatively at the moment, but we need to get there as quick as possible because the country needs to see Kamala Khan in real life. All right. Anyway, all right. So let's move on to our main topic: Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. Yes, I have a wand, listeners.
I have one too.
I'm the only person on this panel that is wandless.
Look. Some days you just need to wave a wand around.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes, I got my wand in Orlando. I needed to have it with me.
This is one of several wands that I own, actually.
Does not surprise me.
This came from the Hollywood Park, though.
But Fantastic Beasts and where to find them.
Cup.
Yes.
The prequel to Harry Potter that's been talked about for years.
Yes.
Based on a textbook within the world.
Right.
I read that book.
I did too.
Yes.
I grew up, like, Harry Potter is like the thing that I can most say I grew up with. Because I literally grew up with Harry Potter. I was 11 when he was 11. I was 12 when he was 12. Until they started spacing out the books.
Because Harry Potter was actually supposed to have been born in 1980, but...
No, but when the books were coming out...
Yes.
Like, I actually... Like, that for the first 4 books...
Yeah.
I actually aged with him.
Yeah,
which was part of how I got attached.
I think my little brother was like 10 or 11 when the first book first became like popular in the U.S. I came into the books in a slightly different way. They were starting to get sort of popular in the U.S. My aunt actually sent us the British versions of the first 3 books, so we had those in paperback like before, because I mean, by the time Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone started to sort of gain in popularity, you know, the other books, like the subsequent 2 books, had already been released in the US, and so then it was like you kind of had all this hype building up around these first 3 books, so that by the time the 4th book came out, it was complete Harry Potter mania.
Yeah, I had a cousin who was in London, and she brought back the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
And I read it, and I think I was like 12 or 13 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But let's first thoughts, like quick reactions to Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. As Harry, like Emma, you know, is a huge Harry Potter fan.
Yes, I am.
I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Jesse, a little bit less so than us.
I can take it or leave it.
Yeah. But I want to get that perspective, especially because there's a difference between being an obsessive fan going into something and being a casual fan going into something, especially an extended world story.
Yes.
So, what did you guys think?
I liked it. I found it enjoyable. I felt like
Computer, we could probably fade out the music.
there were 2.
Thank you.
I feel like there were 2 movies happening. There was one that was this really fun buddy comedy between Kowalski and Newt Scamander, and then there was this other story, this very dark story about Graves and Credence and all of that like creepy nomad like Salem society, we want to burn all witches family.
Yeah.
And you know that, and because the stuff with Newt Scamander and Kowalski and the 2 sisters most of it was so fun, it made the other story feel like really dark and out of place.
Yeah, I thought out of all the Harry Potter universe films, this one failed as a movie the most. Like, it did not, there are some basic movie making things that did not happen in this that made it really difficult to follow.
Yeah.
All of the stuff about Grindelwald, all of that was completely. I don't know if that's like if you're a big fan of Harry Potter, if you know who he is.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd never heard of him before, and all of that stuff was completely lost on me.
He is an established character, and we'll get a little bit more into him and his story
and so
the implications.
That reveal, I remember watching it, and that reveal happened at the very end, and a lot of the people in the theater, like, I could hear people going, like, have we seen that guy before? Like, do we know who this person is?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to do a big reveal, like, you kind of have to establish that person beforehand, which they never did.
No, I totally agree.
Yes.
I think with the Grindelwald thing, they were totally banking on people's prior knowledge of Harry Potter and not even realizing that. And I feel that Grindelwald is a character that, because the last book in the series is so dense. Granted, it could have been 100 pages less of them wandering around the woods, but that's my opinion. Sure. But there is a lot more focus, because the thing is in the movie, because flashbacks are so visual, they tend to just, kind of gloss over the flashbacks, and it works perfectly well for a film. The problem is it doesn't necessarily resonate with you in the way it does. Like in that last book, you definitely get a lot of the history of Grindelwald, who was basically was the last before Lord Voldemort. He was like the worst dark wizard that there ever was. He was at Durmstrang, and he left because he's like, no, wizard supremacy all over the place, and he becomes friends with Albus Dumbledore. So for me, it's like, yes, of course I know who Grindelwald is, but I totally agree with you that, like, if you are only sort of a casual fan, you're not really going to know who he is. And yes, you know who he is going into the film because of the news lines in the opening credit sequence. Yeah. However, all they do is show like a vague shot of the back of his head. They don't ever show like a portrait of him or anything.
And he was in disguise the entire time, so it would have been fine to have just shown a picture of him
I totally
at some
agree.
point.
And I think basically the only reason they didn't is because it was Johnny
Depp.
Oh yeah, we should. we didn't put up a big spoiler warning. I mean, if you guys have listened to the show, you know that when we do reviews, it's a full spoiler.
Yeah.
We didn't do a spoiler-free review, and I apologize for that. if anyone got this far.
Yeah.
Sincere apologies, but spoilers throughout from here going forward. But yeah, because it was Johnny Depp, which had been rumored in the press and everything.
Yeah.
I almost think they leaked it because they were worried people wouldn't connect. They would be like, who is this person?
Well, and
because it didn't land the same way. I think if it had been just any other actor, they would have been more like willing to put him on a poster.
Absolutely.
Also, like they didn't frame Grindelwald's argument or like his philosophy in a very evil way. Like so far, they're like in the United States, wizards can't talk to humans, can't marry humans, can't do anything.
Well, I think
to me that's an evil standpoint where to me I feel like the wizards in all of Harry Potter world, like they have a secret government, and especially in this movie, like hundreds of people died. So many people died, and then everyone had their memory erased. So you just wake up and you're like, oh, my sister and my mom are dead, and you just don't know why.
Let's keep going with the story of just with
Yeah.
Grindelwald
Sure, yeah.
and the war, and like we'll go back to Newt and like his storyline in a minute. But like to me, I think that's actually a benefit of it, is that like he is like the villain, and that but like I think his story is. He's an anti-hero, because I see his side, and that's what I want from my villains. I want to see their side, and I think this is the chance for them to sort of go back in and like point out all of those things in the Harry Potter universe that like when it was like a fun story, kid story, we were like, oh yeah, they're hiding amongst us, and blah, blah, blah. But like when you start digging into the darker aspects of it gets weird.
And I certainly don't, and I actually think that I do actually think that the choice to make the relationship between wizards and humans in the U.S. so sort of like tense and awful, like I think that's really interesting and slightly reflective of certain actual political things going on. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, we'll talk about. I have a whole thing where I want to talk about the American wizarding culture.
I do think that for me, with the revelation that Graves was actually Grindelwald the whole time, to me that took away so much from the character of Graves, who I was starting to see as kind of that anti-hero. You know what I mean? Like I love X-Men. I'm firmly Team Magneto. You know what I mean? Like I totally understand Magneto's point of view, and so I was kind of seeing Colin Farrell, Graves, as that kind of character, as like he's gonna lead a wizard revolution, and like I get it, because humans are so like fearful of them and awful to them, and you understand why, because they're very destructive.
But I mean, with Magneto, you get the story of his like family in a concentration camp.
Yeah.
You see like all of the racism. Like you get the second Salem people, but they're kind of shown to be like people on the side. Like even like the established government makes fun of them and doesn't take them seriously. Yeah. So like I feel like if they were trying to establish that in a better way and establish an anti-hero with Graves, like the second Salem people should be the norm in the United States.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Like should have power instead of being like this abusive mom in a tiny little building.
I think that's where, and this is sort of somewhat of a failure, but I think this is all where they're headed. I think the idea is that like while we saw Grindelwald in the books when we read about him as this like very dark, very evil wizard, I think what we're gonna get is a sort of not retelling, but like because we're seeing how events played out. I think it's going to be like a lost history where he's not as evil as he's been painted.
Well, and I absolutely think that that's where that's going, and I think that's even implied in the books, like based on the fact that he did have this friendship with both Aberforth and Albus Dumbledore.
Potentially a romance. Like there's a rumored romance between Grindelwald and Dumbledore.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, and certainly, J.K. Rowling has certainly outwardly said that she wrote Dumbledore as a gay man, and that
and said this week that that forthcoming movies will most likely explore his sexuality.
Absolutely, and I am so all about that.
Sure.
So I absolutely think that is where this is going. It's like you're gonna see the villain, the quote unquote villains side of things. So for that to happen, I feel like this was really just a setup for additional films. And it's so interesting to me because the story seemed like it was focused on Newt Scamander based on all of the advertisements and stuff. And certainly he was a big player in it. But ultimately, like, I don't know, I feel like he doesn't need to be in any of the other movies.
He just sort of like, it didn't seem like that's what they were setting this up to be like Newt's continued story.
Not at all.
I had no idea that there were plans for other extended universe movies.
Yeah.
4 more.
4 more. This does not feel like it feels like a setup movie.
Yeah.
But it does not feel like a movie that, like, I don't see any of these characters going forward. Like, I don't see any of them return. Like, this felt very contained.
Right.
Yeah.
With the exception of Grindelwald.
With the exception of Grindelwald.
And I liked, like, well, going back to Newt, because, like, it's his movie, or it's supposed to be his movie.
Yeah.
I really did find his character very interesting. I love the motivation for him coming to the U.S. to, like, return Thunderbird to its home.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a very light motivation.
Yes.
But I think that kind of simplicity could be it's driving force. It's just like, it's a guy on a journey and he gets sidetracked, which is a very classic thing. Like, that's what happens.
Yeah, and I liked the character of Newt Scamander quite a lot. I thought Eddie Redmayne was great. And again, like, I so enjoyed his story with Kowalski, the guy who was trying to open the bakery. Like, that was such a fun, like, friendship that the two of them had. And I loved Queenie, who, you know, fell in love with Kowalski. I thought that was adorable. And she was a really cute, fun character. Her sister, for me, Tina, fell real flat.
I didn't understand any of her motivation.
Yeah, I didn't either.
They hinted at, like, what she did with the second Salem people, but we never got an actual
what
answer.
I gathered from it is that she, through her just, like, going about her business as an aura or as a wizard cop, she found she noticed these people because they're speaking about anti-witch and wizard stuff. And she saw that she was abusing the kids that she had adopted, and she wanted to put a stop to it outside of her purview as an aura. And that's what got her fired. I will say, very much appreciate. I'm pretty sure this is the first Jewish wizard in any Harry Potter lore.
I also noticed that.
I did like the Jewish
her name
wizards.
is Tina Goldstein, and I'm like, yes, first Jew.
It's for sure Katrina Goldstein, by the way.
No, it's some weird, crazy wizard name.
The Kowalski Newt thing reminded me a lot of. Have you ever seen the Mos Def Bruce Willis movie 16 Blocks?
I can't say I have.
It's a great movie. It's basically Bruce Willis is protecting Mos Def, who's a witness, and Mos Def's entire thing is, like, he just wants to open up a birthday cake making, like, bakery.
Aww, that's cute.
And it's a really sweet story, but it reminded me a lot of it's just like the back and forth and, like, the talking about baking, like, reminded me of that. I loved all of the Newt stuff. I'm not a big Eddie Redmayne fan. He hasn't earned it for me. But I loved a lot of the little things he did. Like, he never looked anyone in the eye, which I thought was a great just character piece, that this guy is more comfortable being with his animals than he is with people. And, like, he never looked anyone, like, he would for seconds, but never held anyone's eye, which I thought was, like, a great little character bit. And I would have, like I was saying, like, I would have just enjoyed a movie about him and Kowalski trying to find all of his animals in New York.
I totally agree.
And I get that they had to set up. Now that I know that there's 4, I get that they had to set up everything else. But I think they had a really simple, nice movie that they could have made, and instead they really muddied it up with a lot of stuff. Because all of the creature stuff was fantastic.
Yeah,
what was interesting was they actually didn't show him, like, studying animals. He just kept them, but he didn't discover any new ones or, like, where we thought this was going to be him writing his textbook. He already pretty much done it.
See, it felt to me a little bit like, now that you brought it up, Jesse, that they had this really nice, simple story, and it could have been a very easy format of, this wizard goes to America and goes on a hunt for new creatures and documents everything, writes a textbook that is still required reading at Hogwarts today.
Yeah.
But it almost felt like they started making that movie and then went, you know what, guys, let's make 5 movies. We're going to add all this setup for future films.
You know what? This is the perfect this reminds me of the Hobbit movies, where they had 2 series, and the Hobbit movies were complicated to do because of like a whole bunch of other things that we don't have time to get into. But it was that like we got sidetracked with this other story that's related to the bigger, darker world around it. Yeah. But so the lighter story that we wanted to tell was lost within because the lighter story doesn't have world-ending like potential. Yeah. It gets lost amongst everything else. Yeah. And I would have liked to focus more on Newt and his story.
I agree.
Because that was the fun. That's the light kid story that we expect from Harry Potter. And I want to see the Grindelwald.
Of course.
Dumbledore story too, because there's a bunch of fascinating stuff.
And I mean, you almost sort of want it to like grow in the way that the Harry Potter novels did, where it's like, you know, the first one started off, they were definitely way more for kids, and it is a franchise that grew up with its audience. Yeah. And so I almost feel like for your reintroduction into the wizarding world, you want to have just that Newt Scamander story, which was really fun.
I'll bet you an earlier draft of this probably did have the Grindelwald stuff as a much more minor part of the story. Yeah. As like a way to like just a small thing to thread into the sequels. But then once it starts getting developed, they start expanding that because this is how we're gonna get people in. Yeah. This is gonna be the big spectacle that people are expecting after Deathly Hallows. Yeah. And that's where we wind up. All right. Let's talk about the quote the science and the science and by that I also mean like the political science, like all the stuff that goes into like expanding the Harry Potter world.
Real quick, also the big bad thing, the Obscurus, felt very 2010.
We're gonna talk about the Obscurus.
The bad thing is a giant cloud with eyes. I was like, in 2010 there were like 13 movies that all had the big bad thing was just a cloud.
The Day the Earth Stood Still reboot.
Everything was just clouds.
Well, like so we started out. We had MACUSA, the Magical Congress of the U.S.
Yes.
They were cool. They worked.
They're all right.
I'm very uncomfortable with a shadow government.
Yeah. Well, the American wizarding culture I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. A month ago, I would have been like, hey, why are you just crapping all over Americans? We're not all just asshole like that. And today, I'm like, all right,
I get
that's
it.
a fair representation of American culture.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very interesting. The Americans are progressive in certain ways, where like house elves are free.
Yeah,
like
I love
all
that.
house elves are free, but you cannot marry like a nomage and a wizard cannot marry.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing. That,
Yeah, they're not even really supposed to talk to them. Supposedly, like it's a very
separate but equal.
Yeah.
Which at the time is a very.
Oh, I think nomages are not equal to wizards.
All right. Yeah. That's fair. That's true.
Yeah.
But they see themselves as above, but like they also have to hide, and I think that's what will inspire the Grindelwald sort of revolt against it. Because
I mean the thing is though is that like Grindelwald came from Europe, so you have to kind of wonder like how long has he been Graves that he's like so familiar with like the American socio-political magical world to know that wizards live. You know, in fear in a way.
It was one of my questions was like, is Graves is there a Colin Farrell laying around like where he's like pulling Polyjuice potion or is he just like a fake? Like has he been hiding here for that long that he formed
that he
this
just
identity?
created the fake persona of Graves.
One thing
go either way.
One thing I really enjoyed about this is we got to see. We're so used to the Harry Potter aesthetic of like English folklore kind of style. Like British folklore wizards, and we got to see American folklore type stuff. Like all of the magic stuff was very like turn of the century, like big buildings, big kind of Americanized wizard stuff. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, like the stuff we really liked about the new Independence Day reboot was the idea of like, what would our culture look like if aliens had attacked 20 years ago and we were using their technology? And it was very much like, what would American culture look like through a magic lens? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool.
It did an effective job. I liked the with the house elves, like Narlac, like the Speakeasy, run by house elves. Ron Perlman. Ridiculous. That's ridiculous that was Ron Perlman.
So good.
When I was writing notes in my head, I was like, oh, a cantina scene.
I mean, that was what it was.
They very clearly had a couple things. I was like, that sounds like the music from Star Wars.
Yes.
I was fine with it.
Yes.
But I did like everything that they built around, like with the danger clock.
I mean, the world building here was super interesting.
They almost spent too much time building the world.
Right, and not establishing the motivations and backstories of the characters.
Or cleaning up plot holes and stuff. We had like some amazing creatures, like the Niffler was adorable.
I'm obsessed with the Niffler.
So much fun.
Oh my god.
The Rumpant, the rhino type thing was really funny.
Eagle, is that what that was? The screaming, what was it?
The Screaming Evil.
Screaming Evil.
It was something evil.
It was MacGuffin, the animal, but it was great. Like, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, the creatures were really fun.
The big one, and big for me, because I tried my best to rep colors.
I know. I don't have any Thunderbird stuff. So
Thunderbirds is where I got sorted for Ilvermorny.
Me too.
The Thunderbird, or the Thunderbird, also I believe the Latin name is Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, that is true.
Accurate.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things that frustrated me. Like the Thunderbird was a great way to get him on his journey, and like I loved that aspect of it. The creature design was brilliant. It was gorgeous. I love that it's native to Arizona and like all of that.
Would have loved to see wizards in Arizona.
I love that it like the fact that it hails from like they managed to slide in a little bit of Native American culture.
Thunderbird is a Native American creature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I in my head nomage. I know it like no magic, but in my head like mage is also like some either Inuit or Iroquois, like some tribe. Word for magic is close to mage, and like of course we're like that sounds like magic, so we'll just use that, and it works.
Yeah.
And that's how it evolves, because the fact that it has a J and is mage, like it sounds very much like we have Connecticut and like all that stuff.
I would have loved to have seen it when they had that parliamentary meeting or whatever it was, the Senate meeting. There was like one Native American magician there, and it would have been so. It's such a missed opportunity since like magic in the United States has such a different origin than magic in Europe. It would have been really cool to have seen some like shamanism or like just some more Native American kind of stuff.
Yeah, they had someone in the Congress that was in it.
Like I liked that the Minister of Magic was black, and I liked that in that kind of like Senate meeting, so to speak.
Yeah.
That but that was the most diverse scene in the whole movie. Like all the main characters were white people, and like I'm sorry, but this is an opportunity where you're starting with a completely fresh story. Nobody has any expectations about what these characters look like.
Yeah. So there was some interesting science note where like Newt actually made a point that Muggles or no mages and wizards have a different physiology.
Yes,
the first time I've ever heard anyone say that.
I loved
and
that.
It implies so much about the world that I got really excited.
It's a little the little genetic differences.
But that's part of like and how like the obscurials can come to be. The fact that Credence like had built like the fact that it's a physical thing within somebody that if they don't let it out, if it's forced to be kept down, can explode. It also had big implications. And I'm rushing a little bit here because we're running out of time. But to what I'm sure we'll see as we go forward, because Ariana, Dumbledore's younger sister, it was all we know from the stories is that she had these outbursts because she had some trauma where she hurt some Muggles as a kid, and so she kept it all down. She was hidden away, and now it seems like she's probably an obscurial.
Completely.
And that's where it all comes down, and that is going to be and that's probably why Grindelwald's here investigating it, and it'll be why there's a fallout between them.
And all jokes about the obscurial being clearly a villain from a movie from 2010.
Accurate.
Which is 100% accurate. I did like that concept, and I'm interested to see
the concept is very
more.
interesting. Yeah. It just could have been a more interesting design.
Yeah.
Also to build it up as a big bad thing and just have 12 wizards hit it with light and kill it
I
immediately.
know.
Was like, what was this threat?
Yeah,
Like,
that was disappointing, and I also felt like it would have been more interesting if the Thunderbird didn't erase everybody's memory and we tried to repair relationships between wizards and muggles, but that's me.
Which was just a convenient way to, like, when it's like they wrote themselves into a hole. That's why I called it the Deus Machina. They wrote themselves into a hole, and they had a cute little way to, like, clean it up.
But it also would have been an interesting way to, if this is the first in a 4-film series, it would have been an interesting way to set up the next films about if that's the main thing that is surrounding these next stories is like the tension between humans and people who are magic. Like, why wouldn't you just leave it on that note?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And then, like,
it's the flaw. It's the worry of having. It's the problem with doing prequels is because you are somewhat limited. They couldn't out Wizarding the Wizarding World in the 1920s because in the 1990s it's not out.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't make sense for it to be out in America and not in London.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, last thoughts as we wrap up. With like, we gotta ask as our last thing, what would Neil deGrasse Tyson say about? Because we always ask the question.
Seeing is not believing.
You can see it all you want, but if they erase your memory thanks to a magic brain,
so
like,
true.
no, I mean, it's all ridiculous. But the fact that there's, I think, like the scientist angle on this, the fact that there's a physiology to magic, it starts to get into that Arthur C. Clarke realm, and that's sort of like that little line excited me as a science fiction nerd in a huge way.
Also, there are, it's something ridiculous, like hundreds of species of Coleoptera, which are beetles, are discovered every day.
Yeah.
Like, there are animals out there that we still don't know and are not classified. And so, like, the beast aspect of it, and also, like, the conservationist aspect of this as well, where, you know, wizards are threatened by these animals, so they're killing them all. And, you know, Newt is trying to save them and, like, educate people on it. I think that is something that Neil deGrasse Tyson would agree with.
That's a great message. This movie had a lot of great messages about accepting the people around you,
That's very true.
about environmentalism and all of that.
It got a little lost.
And that's some of the good things about this, even amongst all the bad. I still enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, it was enjoyable.
I give it 7 out of 10 wands.
Yeah, I give it a 6.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I'm more of a 6.5, but
All right.
yeah.
We're close.
The table is divided.
Divided by half a point. All right. On that note, guys, thank you so much for joining us here at Sci-Fi Weekly for this little abrupt detour into magic. I've been your host, Zach Wilson. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @ThatZachWilson. Jesse Klein.
I'm Jesse Klein. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JessKlein1, JSSKlein, the number 1. Coming up, S.H.I.E.L.D. is back, right? We're gonna have S.H.I.E.L.D.
In 9 days.
In 9 days? It's been a while. There's a lot to talk about. So you can find me on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at AfterBuzz. And I do comedy all around the Los Angeles area, so look for me there.
And thank you, Emma Fife, for a wonderful guest for joining us.
Yeah, this is really fun. I am Emma Fife, as always, all over the internet, wherever Emma Fifes are sold, at my name. Also, pop on over to our sister network, AfterBuzz TV. Tonight, I am on 2 after shows. You can see me on the Bob's Burgers after show at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific, and immediately following that will be the Ash vs. Evil Dead after show at 9 o'clock. So check us out.
Awesome.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Sci-Fi Weekly, where we're always just one lab coat away from being real scientists. Have a good night.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.